Committee members, the Human Committee will resume for the second hour in public. The first item of business we have to do is to choose a vice chair to replace the vice chair that we had. I'll turn it to the clerk to take us through the election of a vice chair. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Donc, conformément à l'article 106.
So, pursuant to Standing Order 106, the vice chair needs to be a member of an opposition party other than the main opposition party. I'd like to move Ms. Adrienne Larouche as the second vice chair. It is moved by Caroline Desrochers that Adrienne Larouche be elected second vice chair of the committee. Are there any other motions? Seeing that there are no other motions, is it the will of the committee to adopt the motion? Great. So I declare the motion adopted. So Ms. Larouche is duly elected as second vice chair of the committee.
Merci, Madame Larouche. We will now continue on with the agenda item. Subject to the subject matter we're in meeting today is for Part 5, Divisions 34, 36, and 44 of Bill C-15, an act to implement certain provisions of the budget tabled in Parliament on November the 4th, 2025. I would like to welcome our witness from Build Canada Homes, Anna Bello, Chief Executive Officer, Jean Lamarande, Senior Vice President, Policy and Operations, from the Department of Housing, Infrastructure and Communities, Janet Golding, Senior Assistant Deputy Minister, Housing and Homeless Branch. Ms. Bello, you have 5 minutes if you wish to give an opening statement before we move to questions.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members, for the opportunity to highlight the work we're doing at Build Canada Homes to address Canada's housing crisis. The measures proposed in Bill C-15, the Budget Implementation Act, will equip Build Canada Homes with the authorities we need to deliver housing at the scale and speed Canadians deserve. I am pleased to be joined today by Janet Golding, Senior Assistant Deputy Minister, and Jean Lamarande, Build Canada Homes, Senior Vice President of Policy and Operations. Across the country, housing supply isn't keeping pace with demand, putting sustained pressure on affordability and availability. Addressing this requires action at scale. As a new agency, Build Canada Homes is part of a broader set of federal measures to accelerate housing construction, restore affordability, and reduce homelessness. These efforts recognize that increasing supply, particularly non-market and affordable housing, requires coordinated action with partners across governments and Indigenous communities, as well as the private and non-profit building sectors. Build Canada Homes is a lean, purpose-built agency that is leveraging public lands, deploying flexible financial tools, and catalyzing modern methods of construction. In doing so, we are positioned to accelerate timelines, improving productivity in the sector, and support a more innovative home building sector. Build Canada Homes will also be a key driver to Canada's Buy Canadian policy. By prioritizing Canadian materials, the agency will drive demand for Canadian steel, lumber, and aluminium, while strengthening domestic supply chains and supporting local jobs. The measures proposed in the Budget Implementation Act will provide the legislative authority to operationalize Build Canada Homes and ensure it has the resources needed to deliver results. Specifically, these measures will authorize payments out of the Consolidated Revenue Fund of up to $11.5 billion to support our operations and activities. This funding will enable the agency to partner with provinces, territories, municipalities, nonprofits, Indigenous partners, and builders to finance and accelerate housing projects. The bill also authorized just over $1.5 billion to capitalize Canada Lands Canada Limited, allowing Build Canada Homes to unlock construction of its portfolio sites. We have already advanced 6 federal land projects toward construction and committed to getting shovels in the ground this year on thousands of affordable homes. Requests for qualifications have been issued for up to 4,000 homes on federal lands across these 6 sites. In Ottawa, just outside the downtown core, we will build approximately 1,100 homes on Huron Road. We will deploy the same rapid build approach in Dartmouth, Edmonton, Longueuil, Toronto, and Winnipeg to get new homes built for Canadians as quickly as possible. And this is just the beginning. Since its launch in September 2025, Build Canada Homes has delivered measurable results. The agency has formed partnerships with provinces and municipalities, forging commitments to ensure supportive and transitional housing and matched with wraparound services residents need. That includes 30 supportive and transitional units announced in Nova Scotia and 54 in Toronto, with further negotiations underway to ensure critical services. Build Canada Homes is also committed to building Indigenous partnerships that further self-determination and contribute meaningfully to meeting the needs of Indigenous communities. Through Build Canada Homes, the governments of Canada and Nunavut Tugnaavik Incorporated have reached an agreement in principle to support the development of 750 units of non-market housing in Nunavut. These homes will be designed and delivered in collaboration with Inuit for Inuit. Bill C-15 will unlock the tools for Build Canada Homes to forge new partnerships, drive coordinated action, and establish modern development models that can scale affordable housing like never before. This is how we will move from incremental progress to transformative results. By changing how Canada builds, Build Canada Homes is delivering exactly what Bill C-15 is meant to unlock: speed, scale, and innovation. Another meaningful indicator of our early momentum is the level of engagement we are seeing from across the country. Since releasing our investment policy framework and launching our national submission portal in November, we've seen strong interest nationwide. Proposals have come in from every province and territory. Many are under review, and hundreds more are in progress, building a robust pipeline of projects ready to break ground in 2026. In Ottawa, we're partnering with the city on $400 million of effort to deliver up to 3,000 new homes, with many starting in construction in 2026. In Nova Scotia, a $300 million partnership will unlock up to 1,430 homes across the province. More than half of these will be community, nonprofit, supportive, or transitional units. In building partnerships that prioritize non-market and nonprofit housing, we are ensuring affordability in the long term. Our goal is clear: to create a system that doesn't just build more homes, but builds better, faster, and in partnership with people who make housing possible. Build Canada Homes is here to drive that change. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, Madam Belot. We'll now begin the 6-minute round of questioning with Ms. Goodrich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to our guests for being here today to discuss this important issue. We've got a limited amount of time, so I'm just going to ask that you keep your answers quite short so we can get through all the questions. So how much has Build Canada Homes, Canada's 4th housing bureaucracy, spent since its inception nearly a year ago?
So we were announced on September 14th, and we are waiting for this bill to pass to actually have access to the funds. So we have done agreements with both Ottawa, with Nova Scotia, but it's this bill that will allow us to spend the money. So the money that we've spent is actually the 3,000 homes in Ottawa, the 1,430 in Nova Scotia, 54 in supportive in Toronto, and 4,000 in direct builds in 6 sites across the country.
Okay, so, but how much money have you spent? So as I told you before, how much money was spent since you were created? So in these deals, we have
$1.5 billion on the 4,000 units, $400 million on the Ottawa deal, $150 million on the Nova Scotia, and $22 million on Ottawa. That is the total amount that was spent on creating over 7,500 units across the country.
Okay, so you're taking credit for work that's been done by another agency, the Canada Lands Company, which is Canada's second housing bureaucracy. Is that accurate?
Is not accurate. We are developing in a very different model. We are putting a request for proposals that were not on the street. What we are doing is actually leveraging public land together with financial tools, which has not been done before. And that is the innovation about Build Canada Homes, is actually in one agency having the use of public land and leveraging public land and financial tools.
Thank you. So how many of these units that you guys have done are move-in ready?
So 9 of the homes in Nunavut are moving ready. We just got the notice very soon, and all these units will have shovels in the ground in 2026.
So,
and as you know, it takes some time to build the units, and we're still waiting for the money from this budget bill.
So the first Canadian housing bureaucracy, CMHC, says that we need to build 500,000 housing units a year. And you said we've built 9. That's a long ways off 500,000. So would you say that we're in a housing crisis here in Canada?
So we are one of the initiatives that the government is taking to build housing. We are focused on the non-market. Like I said, the organization has been operational since September, and in our first 100 days, we are working on 7,500 units. Again, we are one part of the solution. We act on one part of the housing continuum. CMHC continues to do their work and support housing and other agencies.
But I didn't ask that. I asked, are we in a housing crisis? And can you answer that?
I've been working on housing for many, many years, actually since 2010 when I first started working on housing, and I would say that since that time we continue to be in a very difficult situation on housing and a housing crisis.
CMHC's estimate, they say that we need 500,000 housing units a year. That means 46,666 a month, that we've achieved 9 in 7 months. I think that's pretty indicative that this is a failure. And I think most Canadians would actually agree with the Conservatives in calling it a housing crisis.
If I could just explain that the amount of housing built in this country will be delivered by many sectors. It's not Build Canada Homes that will be delivering 500,000 homes. We need the private sector, we need the nonprofit sector, we need the municipalities, the province, everybody to come together. It's not one organization that builds 500,000 homes. What happens, and very often I say there's not one sector, there's not one government that has solved this housing crisis. This is another thing that Build Canada Homes brings to the table, is the partnership approach that we work together to build housing.
I appreciate that you did call it a housing crisis somewhere in that answer, actually. So on the partnership question, just the number, how many Indigenous partnerships have you guys forged since you were created?
So Nunavut with 750 homes, that's the first one that is announced, and we have several ones in the works right now.
How many more?
We have several that we are negotiating with right now.
There are hundreds of First Nations across this country. There are many, many Métis communities across this country. There are many Indigenous communities. And you say that there's one and you can only say several more. So can we, like 7, 10?
And it's a real priority for Build Canada Homes to work with our Indigenous partners. That is why we have reached out not only to the housing providers in the Indigenous community, we're actually working with, reached out to housing manufacturers, because not only do we want to create housing, we want to create this as an economic and community development.
Thank you. So Build Canada Homes is now the 4th Liberal housing bureaucracy. Is this not an admission that the first 3 bureaucracies failed?
No, this is a new way to deliver the tools that we have, and Canada Lands is coming to work under
I just have very little time
Lands.
left. So the next question is, Build Canada Homes working with DND to build homes for those serving our country?
We are, yes, they are.
Where?
Yes, we are.
In which locations?
We've just initiated the conversations on how we're going to deploy our resources with their needs and the resources that currently exist within their department.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Goodrich. Right on time. Madame de Rocher. for 6 minutes.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you to our witnesses for being with us this afternoon in person here with us for a very important conversation.
Interesting to hear my colleagues across when they've voted time and again against any sort of support to solve the housing crisis. And I would just remind that we have been very clear that there is a housing crisis because we have set up Build Canada Home. Mais je veux vraiment laisser le temps aux témoins.
I just want to give time to our witnesses so that they can speak, because after about 20 years in bureaucracy, I have to say that I'm really impressed by the work that has been done to set up the agency, so congratulations. Let me start with that. Can you talk a little bit about the reactions and the feedback from stakeholders when you announced Build Canada Homes? How was this announcement received by the private industry, by construction companies, by all sorts of stakeholders that are working in this realm of affordable housing?
Thank you. I'm going to answer in English if that's okay. It was very well received because many, and pardon me, including myself, because I've been both on private sector, nonprofit, and government on the other side, many that have advocated for the federal government have asked for many, many years to have public lands more available to build and to have this coordinated with financial tools. And this is exactly what Build Canada Homes is doing. Also, to have an agency that has a flexibility in addressing the different housing needs and realities across the country. And this is, again, the flexibility that we've been given to work with the local communities, with the provincial governments, with the municipalities to respond to their needs using flexibility to, at the end of the day, unlock projects, make projects work, get shovels on the ground, and respond to the local needs.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Can you talk a little bit about how the focus of Build Canada Home on modernizing construction is actually going to help build faster, build more quickly, and eventually, at term, reduce the cost of building?
We are investing in a part of the market all the way from transitional housing that, let's be honest, the market does not produce, right? So it's necessary to invest funds from the government in this area all the way to that more workforce housing, where we start partnering with the private sector and so on. And by doing this investment and making sure that we create a pipeline of modular, we are giving something to those manufacturers that they desperately need, which is the certainty of that pipeline. Many of them that have been in consultations with the government have said one of the biggest impediments to scale is the certainty of supply. And so through an investment that needs to happen in affordable housing, in transitional housing, and workforce housing, the government is creating that certainty in supply as well and working with them, that eventually the market as a whole is going to benefit because we're going to have a more robust, a more secure, and a scaled up industry. So that's how we are a catalyst for for those modern methods of construction.
Thank you very much. Peut-être si on, I don't know if, yeah, je vais retourner en français.
I'll switch back to French. Okay, perfect. Well, let's keep talking about market versus non-market housing, because we hear from the opposition, they say that everything will remain on the market side. Leave it all to the market, rather, and everything will be taken care of. But can you please explain how Build Canada Homes will help with non-market housing and market housing?
Merci, President.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, there is a severe shortage of housing in Canada, non-market housing. It's quite limited when you compare internationally, so there is a gap to be filled. So an agency with such a mission comes in at this point specifically. So what we would like to do at Build Canada Homes is not just to finance projects, but to catalyze the whole market by creating opportunities for partnerships between the private industry and the non-market housing industry to develop mixed income projects, so market and affordable housing units together, so that the projects are financially viable. And let's talk about the modern construction methods as well. We are going to support these technologies and create a demand for them. And hopefully these will be adopted by the more general market as well. Do I still have time, Mr. Chair?
30 seconds.
30 seconds.
Tell us, like, what are you proudest about the last 100 days with Build Canada Home?
I'm very proud of seeing the units arriving in Nunavut and that partnership, and having now the Housing Authority, the Inuit with us at the table. It's a tripartite agreement. I'm proud of that. And I'm proud of the agreements that we've done both with Nova Scotia, where it was not only Nova Scotia, it was Nova Scotia, the City of Halifax. We bought the 3 orders of government for projects that we're doing. And in Ottawa as well, developing not only on our lands, but with the City of Ottawa on their list as well. So in 100 days, to be able to put a small, mighty team together, start getting these units out and across the country, and being able to go through hundreds of proposals that have come in.
Merci. Madame Larouche pour 6 minutes.
Ms. Larouche for 6 minutes. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I also would like to thank our witnesses for being with us today for this crucial discussion for the riding of Shepherd as well. I have many questions for you. First off, there are different needs. In your opening remarks, you talked about Montreal, Toronto, Winnipeg, Longueuil. I mean, to solve housing problems in, for instance, the municipality of Granby, in my riding, there are smaller, for instance, municipalities similar to the one in my riding. There are more rural municipalities. So for all these reasons, I mean, we see that Quebec has the highest need in this area. So maybe a first question, why did it take so long to come to an agreement between Quebec and Ottawa? Would it not have been easier and more efficient to transfer the funding to Quebec, as is requested sometimes by Bloc Québécois, the government of Quebec, to smaller municipalities, not to forget these smaller municipalities? So I'd like to hear your thoughts on the importance of these transfers.
Désolé. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the question. I'll start with the mandate of Build Canada Homes. It is to use these financial tools in innovative ways to be able to create affordable housing at scale. When we talk about transfers, it's not an agency that is set up with this specific goal in mind. We are able to offer different types of financing, flexible funding, long-term, short-term. We want to be able to adjust and adapt our offering to the different locations we're dealing with. That is why we announced our partnership with the organization in Quebec. It is to have a consultation table, as it were, with them to be able to work on these projects in a collaborative way. That is what was announced recently. So we will work together. We will work together on common priority projects and fulfill our objectives this way. Thank you. But you will you are going to impose federal conditions on these smaller municipalities, but Quebec is better situated to know about the needs of these smaller municipalities. For instance, in one locality, there might be a significant group of elderly. The organization FADOC, for instance, is very well placed in this sense. So Quebec knows a bit more about the needs of the elderly, senior citizens in these smaller municipalities. So what's your answer to the organization FADOC? They say there are groups that say they are better placed to know about the needs of these communities. So when we're talking about housing in smaller municipalities and for senior citizens, for instance, well, Build Canada Homes doesn't really impose conditions. We don't have a mandate that has conditional transfers. We really put the emphasis on collaboration with the provinces, and we try to find ways of collaborating with different parts of the country. We came to an agreement which was approved by the province of Quebec, and we decided jointly on the projects that we will finance. That is great because we want to fund projects that align with the priorities of the province, be it in rural parts of the province or other parts of the province. Build Canada Homes announced this agreement recently. Well, there was an announcement, but not a concrete agreement just yet. You're saying that there won't be any conditions, but that remains to be seen because we don't have the list of projects that will be adopted or accepted by Build Canada Homes, or the projects that will be set aside or rejected. And there are already existing programs in Quebec that work really well.
List is going to be developed in conjunction with the province of Quebec. We're working together on the projects, but we have also very flexible financial tools. We're not an agency that only has grants and loans. And the reason why we are just not giving the money to Quebec or any other is because we have different tools like equity participation, like loan guarantees. All this can be our participation to unlock a project that a project might need. And so that is what we have to, and we're coming to the table to the government of Quebec to look at the projects that are a priority for the government of Quebec, but to make sure that Quebec has all the available tools like any other province available to them. We would not want to not have the same tools available for a province, just giving them an amount of cash. That is not the model that Build Canada Homes is coming to the table. We come to the table on a partnership.
Merci. Monsieur Aitchison, vous avez 5 minutes.
Mr. Aitchison, you have 5 minutes.
Okay, merci. Ms. Bailo, lovely to have you back. Good to see you again. I wanted to talk to you briefly about, to start, about the 6 sites that were announced on federal lands. They're in Dartmouth, Longueuil, Quebec, Ottawa, Toronto, Winnipeg, and Edmonton. Each of those sites were previously owned by the Canada Lands Company, right? Do you know how long the Canada Lands Company had been working on each of those projects before they were, I guess, transferred to Build Canada Homes?
These are mostly on master plan communities, and I'm imagining a significant time. I've just joined the government on September 29th, so I don't have the history, but I'm imagining that doing a master plan community and getting those sites would require some time. I would call the attention as well for the model that we're also doing to finance. We're having $1.5 million to invest in those sites. So what we're bringing together, it's not only about the land, it's bringing the land together with the source of funds and to actually push for the modern methods of construction, which goes right in line to our mandate.
Okay, let's get into that then. Just to clarify, though, I've done a little research. Dartmouth has been about 11 years since Canada Lands Company got a hold of it. Longueuil, Quebec's been about 20 years since Canada Lands got a hold of it. Heron Road here in Ottawa has been 12 years in the works, longest time period there has been actually just getting the federal government to dispose of the lands. The Downs, it's been 16 years, Winnipeg 5. The Edmonton project's been ongoing for 22 years, and there's still no homes built, of course. And so I guess what I want to point out is that none of these were raw or newly identified lands. They've all been in the works with CLC for years, sometimes decades. 4 of them were already zoned and effectively ready to go. And so Build Canada Homes, I guess your main intervention here has been procurement of financing. So I guess I'm wondering why we needed. Was it not possible for Canada Lands Company to have those tools as well, since it already existed as a federal agency?
We're just bringing, and Canada Lands, as the Prime Minister, when announced Build Canada Homes, did say that Canada Lands made a note of Canada Lands coming under the BCH. So we're going to work with the lands that are available at Canada Lands and other ones. The key is to have the land that is available to leverage that for public use together with the flexible tools that we have. So we are working with the Canada Lands, their expertise, their people, and we're doing exactly that.
But let's dig into that a little bit deeper then. So you also indicated that Build Canada Homes is going to free up federal lands and get them into the mix faster. And so I'm wondering, based on how long it took Canada Lands Company to get these lands out of the federal government's hands, what specifically will Build Canada Homes do differently so the process doesn't take 10 years?
We would work on the rezoning and development. Obviously, the government is the one that has to make the lands available for us, and the goal, maybe Janet can jump in because Housing and Infrastructure is leading that conversation.
No, actually, that's a good point, though. You're going to work on the zoning. You're a former city councillor. You understand the long, painful, outrageously expensive process, the zoning approval and development charges and stuff can be, particularly in Toronto, let's not kid ourselves. So how are you going to speed up that process with municipalities?
The conversations that we're having, and that's why the benefit of Build Canada Homes, for an example, with the City of Ottawa, we've been able to actually get an implementation table that is going to speed the approval of our lands, that is going to get development charges waived on our lands. Same thing with Halifax. And again, because we're bringing these tools together, because we are at the table with the province.
Are you going to do that city by city? Like I realize, okay, you've done something like that with Ottawa, but there's a lot of cities in this country. You're going to do it city by city?
We are going to, the way that we develop our lands is going to be in partnerships with the communities where we operate, and we want governments to come to the table, absolutely.
You're familiar with Tricon's project at Canary Landing in Toronto. I know you were part of the approvals process for that. I'm sure you're aware that the timelines for that project were about 5 or 6 years. It's done. I toured it last year. It's amazing. 30% of the units are affordable and deep. I know that. I know you were. And so I guess I'm wondering why a federal agency, would be needed to do what a private corporation did with the support of the provincial government. Basically gave them the land for a long-term lease and got out of the way, and the private corporation got it done under an agreement that they make 30% of the units affordable super fast. How?
That is exactly what Build Canada Homes is going to do. That is done through IO. It was done through Infrastructure Ontario on provincial land with the City of Toronto and financing from the federal government. This is what Build Canada Homes is actually bringing. We are bringing the federal lands together with the financing that we control as well, and allowing and partner with developers like you're doing to speed up and do developments like you're talking about in 5 years.
I don't have any time left, but if you can provide us a detail how you're going to actually speed things up with cities, that'd be great.
Exactly like I did it with the Tricon when I was at the city.
We'll get back into it.
Monsieur Joseph, pour 5 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to congratulate Ms. Anna Bailão for the excellent work with Build Canada Homes. As she was answering a question by Ms. Goodridge, I had this question I wanted to ask my colleagues. Why did you vote against the budget? Because you voted against the budget. Well, first off, I'm the MP for Longueuil-Saint-Hubert in Longueuil, we had 1,055 units of housing. 40% is going to be non-market. And also recently, we had the chance of having the parliamentary secretary, Ms. Desrochers, in our riding. And with her, we got together with associations working on the issue of homelessness. In Longueuil, we have homelessness rates going up for the past 5 years, and in Shefford, it's the same picture. The same difficulties are being experienced by individuals, by people who are experiencing homelessness. So in Granby, as my colleague said, it's ironic to see the Bloc say that the funds need to be transferred to Quebec, but they also voted against the budget. I'm not saying this to stir the pot, but just wanted to set the record straight. So we know that the crisis of homelessness has to do with the lack of affordable housing and transitional housing. How does Build Canada Homes take this into account, and what are you planning to do with regard to the issue of homelessness as part of your global mandate? And this applies to Longueuil-Saint-Hubert in the writings of my colleagues, because the problem of homelessness doesn't only impact Quebec, it is a Canada problem, and I see that you have a will to make a difference and improve the situation with regard to homelessness.
Thank you. The same day that the Prime Minister announced Build Canada Homes, there was direction on a few fronts, and one of them was $1 billion on transitional housing. We know that the way that we're going to deal with homelessness is with housing, is permanent housing, and that transition from the homelessness into the permanent housing is extremely important. This is one priority that we're working on right now, transitional housing with project shovels in the ground in 12 months. We work very closely with our colleagues at HICC to ensure, because they're reviewing our proposals as well, to ensure that the proposals respond to the goals of the government in general. And we are working with provincial governments to ensure that they come to the table with wraparound services. The transitional housing agreement that we signed in Toronto and that we launched was one done with Minister Flack and with the City of Toronto. Province that was at the table to do the operating in the city as well. Same thing in Nova Scotia as well. Those units there, the provincial government is at the table. So it's not only our participation, but ensuring that we have provincial wraparound services for those units as well.
Okay. Dans la circonscription, il y a pas mal de personnes qui...
In my riding, we are looking at 40% of the housing that will be non-market housing. Can you be a bit more explicit and specific with regard to this non-market housing? Will it be reserved to a certain clientele, a group of people experiencing homelessness, or others?
The 40% of housing, what's going to happen is we're going to work with nonprofit organizations, local nonprofit organizations that are going to operate it for us. So we're going to look very closely at the local needs, and working with the nonprofits, we are going to respond to the populations and going to serve the people that need it the most in those local communities. So we're looking forward to working with the nonprofit sector in your community to make sure that we respond to the needs and have these services as well from the nonprofit organizations.
Ok, je comprends. Je ne sais pas, il me reste combien de minutes? 5 secondes, je vais peut-être...
5 seconds, maybe I'll ask one last question. What is Build Canada Homes' role? So, unfortunately, your time is up.
Merci.
Thank you.
Good try. Madame LaRouche pour 2 minutes et 30.
Merci.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Well, let's talk about homelessness, because my colleague talked about it. It is a problem for the city of Granby and for the region. But earlier last month, I met with organizations that work with people experiencing homelessness, and they are not happy about a program not being renewed, and they're going to receive $30,000 less. So they're losing out. And we're talking about concrete situations, people who have access to services or who will lose access to services because this program is not being renewed. And the answer is, well, there is Build Canada Homes and other programs, but people don't really see Build Canada Homes as a concrete a solution. What they need is emergency aid and cash in some circumstances to help them move on from that situation. So there is a step before they get there. They need these amounts. And because the program is not being renewed, rather the question is, I'd like to hear your opinion about the connection between Build Canada Homes and homelessness. Because maybe people consider Build Canada Homes as a step that comes into the picture much further down the road.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question. I guess I would say that the program that I think you were talking about was 2 years of funding under the Unsheltered Homelessness Initiative, or perhaps you're referring to Verrons chez soi, the federal homelessness program. Verrons chez soi, c'est ça? OK, merci. Non, l'accampement, c'est le programme. OK. Donc, je veux dire...
So,
encampments was very much 2 years of funding. The idea behind the program when it was launched was that it would help support capital investments in things like transitional and supportive housing. However, in the province of Quebec, they chose not to invest in capital investments, which was really the intent of the program, but invested more in services. Oui.
Et parce que cette annonce-là a été faite en plein mois de décembre.
Well, the announcement was made in the middle of December, as people were out on the streets.
Merci, Madame Aitchison, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to. I actually want to talk to you about a couple of specific things now. I understand that you actually have a call coming up with an organization that I had the opportunity to visit while I was in Calgary on the weekend. It's called the Calgary Drop-In Center. And I went for a visit. Truly an amazing organization. What I particularly love about what they're doing is they are aggressively working to find clients permanent housing as opposed to just constantly cycling through the shelter system. I really admire people that recognize that the job ultimately is to put themselves out of business if they can, and that's their effort. So I know that you have a call or a meeting planned with them. And if I could take an opportunity just to say, I hope that call goes very, very well, and you find a way to work with them, and maybe we can help other shelters, operate in a similar kind of way. So I'll just throw that out there. But there's another project specifically that I'd like to mention to you, and I don't often do this, but I think it represents the possibility of a model that can help housing and another organization. You're probably familiar with a couple of different legions across the country that have redeveloped. Sault Ste. Marie is a good example. There's one in Toronto, I know, City of Calgary. There's a couple out there. In my riding of Parry Sound Muskoka, there's a very small community called Bala. It's tiny, but they have a 75-year-old legion that is well past its best before date. And its president just so happens to be Dennis Mills, a former Liberal member of Parliament. And we get along famously. They are working very hard to redevelop that Legion site in a little place like Bala with 125 units of housing, much of which will be affordable. And of course, they've been ready to go. The municipality was all on board. They got things done quickly, which always doesn't happen. They submitted things to, I guess, to Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, and now it's I guess, bumped over to your agency. And they're not looking for huge grants, of course, because these things actually generate some revenue. They're looking for affordable financing, and this is one of the tools that I'm told you have available to you. So I love to, encourage you specifically to look at this Battle Legion project. But I'm wondering, though, if you'd be interested in looking at something more broadly with Dominion Command. A lot of these legions, especially in rural communities, which I think has been largely neglected on the housing file for the last 10 years, have old legions and dwindling membership and old buildings that are in a state of disrepair. And I see this as an opportunity not just to create new housing, but to save the Legion as well. And I'm wondering if you'd be interested in looking at a model like that works collaboratively to redevelop Legions and provide thousands of housing units at the same time without huge grants.
Absolutely. That is exactly the models that the flexibility that we have at Build Canada Homes allow us to work with organizations like that, like Legions, which is ideal because they come with land as well. We know that the different components of the cost of a housing, and the more we can dip into that, take out the land costs, take out, taxes costs, take out the financing costs, that's how you create the affordability. So when you have a program that is Legions or, the United Church, for example, years ago, created their own corporation to develop their own lands. This is the kind of things that now we can partner with and we can support as well. We are seeing as well very interesting proposals coming to us. So, for example, small rural municipalities getting together with their own lands and kind of creating then going with one of the development managers to come together, because it's hard for a smaller municipality, and so creating that capacity. And again, this is the flexibility that Build Canada Homes brings to the table to work with those models, to give the certainty to those models, because we have flexible tools. We're not a program. We're not just a grant or a financing. We can come at it in different ways and foster those partnerships and those bigger models.
We're almost out of time, so I have another quick question for you. If you can you give me a sense of timelines for organizations like the Battle Legion, which have submitted their proposal to your office? What kind of timelines are we looking for? What should we expect in terms of response to the Battle Legion?
So we do a very initial response. We just set up at the end of November. The moment that the application, the proposal is complete, so for example, right now we have about 400 proposals in progress. So the organization started and they haven't completed the submission. One is completed submission. Our goal is to within between 30 and 60 days to start engaging with the proponent. Now, sometimes what we're finding as well is that we might not be able to engage exactly the way that they're coming to us, and we initiate the dialogue and actually put on the table, maybe if you look at it in a different way, maybe if we look at it, maybe we can't come with such a big financing, maybe we do more of a bridge loan or a grant, and we try to work with the proponent to unlock the project and to make the project work.
This is my official invitation to Bella. Come visit us.
Thank you, Mr. Aitchison. But the subject matter is most interesting, and I do agree with you on the opportunity with Legions across the country. With that, we'll move to Ms. Fancy for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, and through you, Chair, it's nice to have you here, Ms. Bailau. So I'm one of the Nova Scotia MPs, except I'm not from the HRM. I'm from, a couple of hours away from HRM, and it's nice to hear the word rural thrown around here a little bit today. I'm going to talk about a story within my riding of South Shore St. Margaret's and then ask you a couple questions about rural-centric policy and development with Build Canada Homes, because as we know, you've said earlier, we need the speed, the scale, and the innovation. So I've been talking with a lot of the developers in my area. So far, so good, but there are a few concerns that are being developed as we get the portal and the structures and supports in place for Build Canada Homes. For example, in terms of rural advocacy and rural lens, a lot of the developers right now have actually stalled in my area. One, because they've got proposals in, but they're feeling like the lack of criteria, such as there's places in my writings where they're saying you need sidewalks, public transit, street lights, which we don't really have in rural Nova Scotia. For us, my colleague across the way talked about, 100 units. For us in our community, 20, 30, 40 units, that's huge. So I wanted to get that out there in terms of some of the feedback that I'm receiving within my riding to help support the local needs. Another thing that we've had are some of these smaller municipalities, and you mentioned before about collating the municipalities for a larger application, similar to what we're seeing happen in New Brunswick. But the reality of that is it's going to fall through. When you're dealing with that many fingers in the pot and trying to get everybody together, I'm asking, how do I have a small municipality or a small nonprofit that can't compete on an application basis because they can't afford the $20 or $30 or $40,000 for a consultant to help put those applications together? So once again, just advocating for that. I've also was at 2 or 3 of the roundtables with the minister this summer where I had brought quite a few developers that deal with affordable housing and deal with efficiency, especially in Efficiency Nova Scotia, and gave a lot of great feedback. But now as I'm seeing a lot of the policy and development and as things roll out, nothing what they were talking about that we need for rural Nova Scotia or through rural communities throughout the country is actually tabled in a lot of this. So I just wanted to once again put that out there as an advocation piece. Now for my real question, sorry about that. For Canadians, municipalities, or industry partners who may not understand the Build Canada Homes model coming from that kind of CMHC model, could you please address the housing crisis and how you would describe the agency's mandate for structure and a rural approach in a way that clearly communicates purpose, objectives, and mechanisms? Because we represent 40% and we really want to have a piece of the pie. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's be clear. When we were talking about the proposals, one of the internal discussions we had was scale. We want to build at scale. Scale is very different in different communities. And so we don't have a minimum purposely because 10 units in a rural community can be a huge scale, not the same as 10 units in Ottawa, for example. And so we do not look at a rural community the same way as we look at as an urban community. So the projects they can come on its own. The reason why we're seeing some municipalities actually coming together is more a resource and convenience than we imposing on them. They know that because they could come and have some certainty of funds, they could most likely have the resources available and the funding available coming together. So we are not imposing that. Well, another thing is we're very different from CMHC. We act on a part of the continuum in terms of the transitional all the way to, I say the middle when we start working with the private development to create affordable housing, but we are focused on the affordable housing. And the difference as well is CMHC is a financial institution with great programs to finance and insurance. We are partners. We are here to work with your nonprofit organizations, with your developers, with the rural communities to partners. We need proposals. We don't have a checkbox that is going to check. What we have is the needs of the community and how we respond and unlock those projects to create the affordability that the community needs.
Thank you so much for that. It's good to see that I've got you on record now that hopefully you pull through for us here in rural Canada. And
that's 5 and change.
I was going to actually talk about the budget.
No, just a moment. We're going to do another round. Another complete round. So we'll go 5 and 5 and 2.5 to the block. So we'll come to the official opposition. Who's going? Mr. Aitchison?
Me.
Good. 5
Lucky
minutes.
you. I get to go again. Ms. Bailão, during the election campaign, the Prime Minister talked about cutting development charges off. He seemed to understand that local government charges and fees are a major impediment to getting homes built and to making sure that they are a little bit cheaper for consumers to purchase. Is Build Canada Homes involved in any part of that I mean, we haven't heard anything more about it since then. So I'm wondering if your agency is going to be part of that process. Is that include part of your mandate?
No, that's not part of our mandate.
Okay, so
and,
then
we find it quite different actually across the country.
It is. I'm sure why it hasn't been dealt with yet. But I'm wondering though, like in Toronto as an example, you have lots of experience there, having been a councillor. You know, the City of Toronto got their Housing Accelerator Fund, $470 million, biggest one in the country, agreed to a number of things, not the least of which was 6 plexes as of right all across the city. They've come back and made them legal in 9 of the 25 wards, and the penalty was to lose $10 million of that funding, so about 2%. So we know, though, that starts have basically gone off a cliff in larger cities like the GTA and the Lower Mainland. So is there anything specifically that your agency will be doing in partnership with the private sector in those outrageously expensive markets to get them building again? I'm worried they're starting to lay people off.
We're working with many nonprofit organizations and private sectors in those markets, being the GTA or in BC as well. We're working not only at the government level, but directly with private sector and nonprofit sector to unlock some of those projects. Again, because we can bring some flexibility, it is important to unlock some of those projects. I would like to go faster, but honestly, I need this budget to pass because without the money, I cannot unlock those projects.
Can you give me an example of what you're doing with a private sector developer to, I mean, it's math, right? Simple math. What are you doing? Give me an example of a private sector developer that you're working with. What are you doing to make the math work?
A bridge loan.
Okay, bridge loan.
So, for example, we've had projects where the rents are coming down. The bond rate, which is what it's used, it's been very, very volatile, has increased. The math doesn't work anymore. So by creating, in a couple of cases, a bridge loan, we're able to get shovels on the ground on those projects, and that unlocks the project.
And that's for rental projects specifically?
These that we're working on, this was for rental projects as well.
And then anything in terms of home ownership?
We're working on a couple of things on home ownership. I hope that you'll be able to see. I can't divulge. It's still confidential, commercial confidential information.
I must admit, the minister was here. We talked to him about all the work that is going on. He raves about your organization and how you're getting rentals built and all that kind of stuff. And I don't doubt that that's important. And I think the non-market supply is low as well. And that's good that you're doing that. But it feels very much like it's happening at the expense of market housing and ownership. Home ownership is something that I think Canadians still aspire to. And if, in fact, the root cause of the challenges there does lie with the cost and the timelines of government in the process, we know that in Ontario, about 30% of the cost of the average home is government. And so if we can't get those costs down, how do we get people back into home ownership?
Tell you, as somebody that came now in the last few years from the private sector, is a mixture of things that make the cost of housing. It is the price of landing, and that includes zoning restrictions sometimes. It is the interest rates that went up. It is the fact that the investor is not there to buy the condo, and it's very hard to get end users to buy a condo in those markets and wait for it for 5 or 7 years. And it's the way that we finance the condominiums. There's many things. There's definitely government fees. There's the timing of approvals. There's a series of things. And when I say that there's not one order of government or one sector that can solve this alone, it is partnerships, and it is bringing every tools to the table, is because that is why I'm so proud, to be honest with you, to be working with Build Canada Homes, because for so many years there was a disconnect in having so much federal land available, the financial tools, and the power to bring partners to the table, and we didn't make use of that. And I think that this is a tool, is part of the solution. It won't solve the housing, but it's a big part of the solution, and it can be a catalyst as well for modern methods of construction.
I just want to say I appreciate your private sector experience, and I hope you really do bring that to bear with this agency, and we do see some results, because, as I'm sure you're aware, the crisis is now, not 5 years from now. So thanks for that.
Aitchison, we'll now go to Ms. Fancy.
Okay.
Ms. Fancy for...
Thank you very much. Through you, Chair. Now let's talk budget, because as you had just mentioned, we need to get this passed in order to unlock all of the good things that we have set in place. Let's get the ball rolling. So my question in regards to the BIA is how would the impact of the proposed $11.5 billion investment in Build Canada Homes, as put forward by the Clause 200, to be tracked and evaluated? And how would transparency and accountability for these investments and their outcomes be provided to Canadians? So this is a transparency question, as you're dealing with one of the biggest purses in all of our government. So how does that transparency put into play with that $11.5 billion?
So we're going to be reporting very clearly on our website as the projects get financed and approved on the number of units financed, the affordability level, what is being, how the money is being deployed. So that will be public and transparent. I note that immediately the 7,400 units that we are working on need those funds available. So those are all shovels in the ground this year that the delay cannot proceed. We did an RFQ. We are doing an RFI now, starting with the sites. We cannot start deploying the money to get the shovels on the ground until the budget gets passed. So it is the sooner we have that money, the sooner we'll get shovels on the ground, and we'll get these ones and the ones that we have in the pipeline available for Canadians to live and for families to prosper.
Nice. Thank you very much for that. I look forward to all members here around this table today to help unlock that money so that you can get the work done that needs to get done. How would the investment policy framework developed by Build Canada Homes inform this allocation of that proposed $11.5 billion?
There's clear priorities that we've indicated in the investment policy, priorities to have shovels on the ground, priorities to be a partner, priorities to have the affordability, the $1 billion for transitional housing. So it sends a signal to the market on what our priorities will be and how the money will be deployed.
And then to finalize today, in regards to what is the rationale then for transitioning Build Canada Homes into a potentially standalone federal agency, and what impact do you think that this will have on government operations and reporting? So
we want to be a catalyst for modern methods of construction, but we also want to be a catalyst to attract others, especially funders, and to be partners as well. So there's certain things that we are not able to do right now. As a part of the ministry, as operating agency, we don't have certain tools. We cannot use our equity, for example, which is a valuable tool as well. But also we want to attract capital. We're talking with banks, we're talking with pension funds, and it is important to do those kinds of partnerships to be a standalone organization.
Nice. Thank you very much today, and those are all the questions that I had, Chair.
Merci. Madame LaRoche pour 2 minutes.
Ms. LaRoche for 2.5 minutes. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Some people have concerns around this issue, and there are organizations working on the topic, and they talk about a definition of affordability that is to be used by Build Canada Homes, and whether it will mean that the housing will actually match the capacity of individuals to pay. For Build Canada Homes, for instance, it seems to rely on 80% of the median rent values. So, all this to say that the definition of affordable housing to be used by Build Canada Homes could lead to some issues. What could you tell us to reassure us that you will indeed finance units that will be appropriate for people with modest incomes, lower incomes, and that these will be a tool to fight against homelessness?
Homes is using an income-based definition that uses census information. So in order to respond to the local needs, we are using the local income, and it will not be 30% more than the median income there. We will support all the way from deeply affordable to the moderate medium affordable. So we have, in certain cases, depending, I'm going to give you in certain markets, depending on the census information, but in certain markets, we're talking about one bedroom for $400 or $300 in the deep affordable case. So we go, again, it's an income-based definition, and it goes from the deeply affordable to the moderate affordable.
Rapidement, dernière question. Toujours pour cet organisme, on se demande qu'est-ce qui va devenir.
Quickly, one last question. What will happen to the cooperative program that announced by the federal government, and will it be replaced by Build Canada Homes?
Build Canada Homes and CMHC are working on all programs affordable to ensure that there's a proper transfer or response to any applicant. And so our commitments from both organizations to the co-op movement is quite significant, and we are working collaboratively on all programs, being AHF, co-op, all those programs, to ensure that there's a proper transition for the affordable housing part of the Build Canada Homes, since it is Build Canada Homes that will be from now on working on that part of the housing continuum. But right now we're working very collaborative with CMHC to make sure that any proponent that has applications receives the service and it doesn't see any issues with their applications or proposals.
Merci, Madame LaRoche. And thank you, Ms. Bailão. Before we close, I would just, as chair, would ask you to pay particularly attention to the questions that were addressed by my colleagues, Mr. Aitchison and Ms. Fancy, as it relates to small rural communities I represent as well. Because, candidly, I think we missed some of those needs over the last number of years. And this will be an opportunity to address the real housing needs in those small communities. So thank them for raising those particular points and for your testimony here today. Committee members, à notre prochaine réunion est jeudi.
Our next meeting will be on Thursday.
To adjourn. Adjourn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.